The morning rush at Rosie's Diner in Portland brought its usual symphony of clinking plates and murmured conversations, accompanied by the persistent aroma of coffee and bacon. Callista Moore's fingers absently cracked against each other as she balanced 3 plates of scrambled eggs along her thin arm. The weight of sleepless nights showed in the dark circles under her blue eyes, partially hidden behind wisps of light brown hair that had escaped her hastily arranged bun. "Order up for table 7, she called out, her voice carrying the practiced cheerfulness that came with years of service industry experience. The early autumn sun filtered through the diner's windows, highlighting the gentle scatter of freckles across her pale face. Between orders, Callista's hand instinctively reached for her phone, checking for any messages from Mrs. Henderson, her elderly neighbor who was watching Juniper. Her daughter's morning medication needed to be taken with breakfast, and despite Mrs. Henderson's reliability, maternal anxiety never rested. The memory of last night's hospital bill still burned fresh in her mind. The numbers seemed to dance mockingly before her eyes. $175,000 for the specialized cardiac treatment Juniper needed. Insurance would cover only a fraction, leaving an impossible mountain of debt that her waitressing salary couldn't hope to scale. "Mom, why do stars shine even when they're dead?" Juniper had asked last night, her blue eyes wide with wonder as they cuddled on their worn couch, watching their nightly episode of National Geographic. The question had nearly broken Callista. Her daughter, so full of curiosity and life, shouldn't have to worry about mortality at 6 years old. The bell above the diner's door chimed, pulling Callista from her thoughts. She quickly dabbed at the corner of her eyes with her apron, forcing back tears that threatened to fall. A quick spritz of her daisy perfume, her small reminder of femininity beyond motherhood, and she was ready to face another customer. The man who walked in carried an air of quiet authority. His tailored gray suit and expertly trimmed black hair spoke of boardrooms and business deals, not greasy spoon diners. He chose a seat at the counter, movements precise and measured like everything in his world had its proper place. "Good morning," Callista greeted, sliding a menu across the counter. "Coffee to start?" He looked up, dark eyes meeting hers with unexpected intensity. "Black, please, strong if you have it." His voice was deep, controlled, the kind that commanded attention without raising its volume. As she poured his coffee, Callista noticed how he automatically aligned the silverware she'd set down, making minute adjustments until everything was perfectly parallel. It was oddly fascinating, this glimpse of compulsion in someone who otherwise appeared so composed. "The usual breakfast rush," she said, attempting small talk as she set down his coffee. "Though we don't get many suits in here." He offered a slight smile, more polite than warm. "I had a meeting cancel. My driver recommended this place." His fingers traced the rim of the coffee cup thoughtfully. "I'm Lucian Thorne." The name tickled something in Callista's memory, something she'd seen in a business magazine or news article, but before she could place it, a crash from the kitchen demanded her attention. She hurried away, leaving him to study the menu. The morning wore on, and despite the steady stream of customers, Callista found herself drawn back to the counter where Lucian sat, now typing on a sleek laptop. He ordered eggs Benedict, ate with precise movements, and continued to work, occasionally glancing up when she passed by. It was during one such pass that her phone buzzed. The text message made her blood run cold. "Juniper not feeling well. Fever. Called school to say she's sick." The phone slipped from Callista's trembling fingers, clattering against the counter. Her world narrowed to a pinpoint of fear, her breath coming in short gasps. Fever could be dangerous with Juniper's condition. She needed to leave, but she couldn't afford to lose this job. Her vision blurred as panic set in. "Are you all right?" The question, simple yet laden with genuine concern, came from Lucian. Callista looked up to find him watching her, his dark eyes now showing something beyond their previous reserve, something almost like compassion. And suddenly, the dam broke. Perhaps it was the gentle tone of his question, or maybe it was simply that she'd reached her breaking point, but words began pouring out of her. About Juniper's rare heart condition, about working double shifts that still weren't enough, about the impossible medical bills and the crushing weight of being solely responsible for keeping her daughter alive. Lucian listened without interruption, his coffee forgotten. His fingers had stopped their rhythmic tracing of the cup's rim, and his full attention was focused on her words. When she finally fell silent, embarrassment flooding her cheeks, he spoke with careful deliberation. "Take care of your daughter," he said, sliding a business card across the counter. "Then call me. I believe I may have a proposition that could help you both." Callista stared at the card, its embossed lettering catching the light. Lucian Alexander Thorne, CEO, Meditech, Innovations. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, hope and suspicion warring in her chest. "Why would you want to help us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He stood, straightening his suit jacket with practiced precision. "Because sometimes, Ms. Moore, life presents us with opportunities to make a difference. Whether we take them or not defines who we are." He placed several bills on the counter, far more than his breakfast warranted. "Go to your daughter." As Callista watched him leave, the business card felt heavy in her hand, weighted with possibility, with fear, with desperate hope. Outside, the Portland morning had turned gray, promising rain, but for the first time in months she felt something different in the air, something that felt dangerously like hope. The pediatric ward of Portland General Hospital hummed with the quiet efficiency of night shift routines. Callista sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair beside Juniper's bed, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall in sleep. The fever had broken hours ago, but the fear lingered, coiling in her stomach, like a stubborn serpent. Juniper looked impossibly small against the white hospital sheets, her blonde curls splayed across the pillow like a halo. Her beloved blue blanket was clutched tightly in one hand, while an IV line snaked from the other. A half-finished cup of hot chocolate, a reward for being brave during the blood draw, sat cooling on the bedside table. "Mommy?" Juniper's voice was drowsy as her eyes fluttered open. "Can we watch up when we go home?" Callista leaned forward, smoothing back a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. "Of course, sweetheart. As soon as Dr. Rivera says it's okay to leave." She forced a smile, though her heart ached at the sight of the medical monitors surrounding the bed. "Promise?" Juniper held up her pinky, a ritual as old as her ability to speak. "Pinky promise." Callista linked their fingers, marveling at how such a tiny gesture could hold so much weight. After Juniper drifted back to sleep, Callista pulled out the business card she'd been turning over in her hands all day. The embossed letters caught the fluorescent light. Lucian Alexander Thorne, CEO of Meditech Innovations, one of the largest medical technology companies in the country. She'd done a quick search on her phone earlier and the results had been overwhelming. Forbes features, Wall Street Journal interviews, innovation awards. The man she'd served Eggs Benedict to was worth billions. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Henderson checking on Juniper. As Callista responded, assuring her elderly neighbor that things were stable, she noticed the time, 11:47 p.m. Nearly 12 hours since that strange morning at the diner, since a man in an expensive suit had offered help with no strings attached. Except there were always strings, weren't there? The doctor's words from earlier echoed in her mind. Without the specialized treatment, Juniper's condition will continue to deteriorate. Time is becoming a factor, Ms. Moore. Time, money, hope, all slipping through her fingers like water. With trembling hands, she dialed the number on the card. 1 ring, 2, 3. Lucian Thorne speaking. His voice was crisp, showing no signs of the late hour. "Mr. Thorne, this is Callista Moore, from the diner this morning." She swallowed hard. About your offer to help. Ms. Moore." There was a pause, filled with the soft sound of papers being moved. "How is your daughter?" The question, so genuine in its concern, caught her off guard. "The fever's down, but they want to keep her overnight for observation." "Which hospital?" "Portland General. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Before she could protest, the line went dead. Callista stared at her phone, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. The rational part of her brain screamed that meeting a strange man at midnight in a hospital was insane. But rationality had long since taken a backseat to desperation where Juniper's health was concerned. True to his word, exactly 20 minutes later, Lucian Thorne appeared in the doorway of Juniper's room. He'd changed from his morning suit to dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But his presence carried the same quiet authority. His dark eyes took in the scene, the sleeping child, the medical equipment, the worried mother, with careful consideration. Without a word, he gestured toward the family consultation room across the hall. Once inside the small room, Lucian closed the door and took a seat, his movements deliberate and controlled. "I've reviewed Juniper's case," he said without preamble. "Our research division has been developing exactly the kind of treatment she needs. It's still in the final testing phases, but the results have been promising." Callista's heart leaped. "You mean you could help with the treatment?" "Yes." He cleaned his glasses methodically, though they appeared spotless. "But there's a complication. The board of directors is conservative. They won't approve compassionate use without significant justification." "I don't understand." Lucian's fingers drummed once on the armrest before he stilled them. "They're more likely to approve if there's a personal connection. A family member of a key executive, for instance." The implications of his words hung in the air between them. Callista's breath caught in her throat. "Are you suggesting marriage?" He stated it simply, like a business proposition. "A legal arrangement that would make Juniper my stepdaughter and qualify her for the treatment program. It would also provide her with comprehensive insurance coverage through my company." Callista's mind reeled. "You want to marry me, but you don't even know me. I know you're a mother who would do anything for her child." His voice softened slightly. "I know. You work double shifts and still make time to watch documentaries with your daughter. I know you hide your tears but wear your heart in every action." "Why would you do this?" she whispered. Lucian stood, walking to the window that overlooked the city lights. "My sister had a heart condition. Different from Juniper's, but—" He trailed off, and for the first time, Callista saw a crack in his composed facade. "She didn't make it. I was 12. Since then, I've built my company with one goal: to ensure other families don't face the same loss." He turned back to her. "The arrangement would be temporary, 2 years minimum to satisfy legal scrutiny. You and Juniper would move into my house for appearance's sake. All expenses covered, including Juniper's education. In return, we maintain the appearance of a legitimate marriage at public functions. And after 2 years? An amicable divorce, with a generous settlement to ensure Juniper's continued care." His tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes held something softer. "You don't have to decide now. Take time to—" "Yes." The word escaped before she could stop it. Lucian blinked, genuine surprise crossing his features. "You should consider this carefully. It's not a small thing I'm asking." Callista stood, her voice finding strength and certainty. "I've spent every day since Juniper's diagnosis considering choices, considering options, considering how to keep my daughter alive." She met his gaze steadily. "This isn't a small thing you're offering either, it's everything." A moment of silence passed between them, heavy with the weight of what they were agreeing to. Finally, Lucian nodded. "I'll have my lawyers draw up the papers tomorrow. We'll need to move quickly to enroll Juniper in the treatment program." As if on cue, a small voice called from across the hall. "Mommy?" "Go," Lucian said softly. "We can discuss details tomorrow." Callista hurried back to Juniper's room, her mind spinning. In the doorway, she paused and looked back. "Mr. Thorne?" He turned, one hand on the elevator button. "Thank you," she whispered. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Get some rest, Ms. Moore. Tomorrow we change both our lives." As she watched him disappear into the elevator, Callista felt the world shift beneath her feet. She'd just agreed to marry a stranger, a billionaire CEO with his own shadows and scars. But as she returned to Juniper's bedside and saw her daughter's peaceful face, she knew she'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. Outside, Portland's notorious rain began to fall, washing the streets clean. Tomorrow would bring contracts and complications, but tonight, for the first time in years, Callista allowed herself to breathe without the weight of tomorrow crushing her chest. The cherry trees lining Lucian's driveway were in full bloom, their pink petals dancing in the spring breeze as Callista's old Honda Civic pulled up behind his sleek Audi. She stared up at the modern mansion through her windshield, its clean lines and vast windows a stark contrast to her cramped two-bedroom apartment across town. "Mommy, it looks like a castle." Juniper pressed her face against the car window, her blue blanket clutched tightly to her chest. "Do you think it has a princess room?" Callista caught Lucian's slight smile in her rearview mirror as he parked his car behind them. They'd just come from the courthouse where a brief civil ceremony had officially made them husband and wife. The plain gold band on her finger felt foreign, heavy with the weight of promises and possibilities. "Let's find out, shall we?" Lucian opened Juniper's door, surprising both mother and daughter with the gesture. He'd changed from his courthouse suit into a casual charcoal sweater and dark jeans, though Callista suspected even his casual clothes cost more than her entire wardrobe. Juniper hesitated, looking to her mother for reassurance. At Callista's encouraging nod, she slipped her tiny hand into Lucian's much larger one. "Is it okay if my blanket comes too?" "Of course." His voice carried a gentleness Callista hadn't heard before. "Blue is my favorite color." "Mine too." Juniper's face lit up. "Mommy says it's because I'm a water sign, whatever that means." The corner of Lucian's mouth twitched. "Is that so?" He glanced at Callista, who was struggling with a heavy box from the trunk. "Please, let me help with those." "I've got it," she insisted, but the box was already slipping from her grasp. Lucian caught it effortlessly, his hands brushing hers, in the process. The touch, though brief, sent an unexpected current through her skin. "You don't have to do everything alone anymore," he said quietly, his dark eyes meeting hers. "That's part of our arrangement, remember?" Before she could respond, a dignified older woman appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Thorne, everything is prepared as requested." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Lucian turned to Callista and Juniper. "Mrs. Chen is our housekeeper. She's been with my family for 20 years. Mrs. Chen's stern expression softened as she looked at Juniper. "Welcome home, little miss. Would you like to see your room? I heard you like princesses." Juniper's eyes widened. "Can I, Mommy?" "Go ahead, sweetheart." Callista watched as her daughter practically skipped after Mrs. Chen, her blue blanket trailing behind her like a royal cape. Left alone with Lucian, the reality of their situation settled heavily around them. They were married, strangers bound, by paper and promises, now sharing a home. "Your things arrived yesterday," Lucian said, leading her inside. "I had them placed in your wing of the house." "My wing?" Callista nearly stumbled on the marble foyer floor. "I thought you'd be more comfortable with your own space." He set down the box and gestured to the sweeping staircase. "The East Wing has its own sitting room, office, and bedroom suite. Juniper's room connects to yours through a shared playroom." The thoughtfulness of the arrangement touched her. "And where do you—" "The West Wing." He cleaned his glasses, a gesture she was beginning to recognize as a sign of slight discomfort. "I believe maintaining appropriate boundaries will make this easier for everyone." A delighted squeal echoed from upstairs, followed by Juniper's voice. "Mommy, come see. It's magical." They found Juniper spinning in circles in the middle of what could only be described as every little girl's dream room. Soft lavender walls housed built-in bookshelves filled with children's classics. A canopy bed draped with twinkling lights dominated one wall, while a custom dollhouse that mimicked Lucian's mansion sat in the corner. A door decorated with hand-painted butterflies led to what appeared to be the promised playroom. "When did you do all this?" Callista whispered, watching her daughter examine every detail with wonder. I had it prepared after our meeting at the hospital. Lucian's fingers traced the rim of his watch, adjusting it slightly. Children need stability during times of change. I thought familiar things mixed with new experiences might help. Sure enough, Callista spotted Juniper's favorite stuffed animals arranged on the window seat, her beloved astronomy books mixed with new titles on the shelves, and framed photos from their old apartment tastefully displayed on the walls. "Look, Mommy!" Juniper pointed to a small desk by the window. "It has a special place for my drawings and everything." Mrs. Chen appeared with a tray of hot chocolate, complete with mini marshmallows, and Callista noticed how the older woman's eyes crinkled with genuine warmth as she set it down for Juniper. "Perhaps," Lucian said carefully, "you'd like to draw something while your mother and I discuss some arrangements." Juniper was already reaching for the new set of colored pencils laid out on the desk. "Can I draw our new family?" The question hung in the air, laden with innocent hope. Callista's throat tightened, but Lucian answered smoothly, "I'd be honored to be included in your artwork." In Lucian's study, the atmosphere shifted from the warmth of Juniper's room to something more businesslike. He sat behind his desk, every item perfectly aligned, while Callista perched on the edge of a leather chair that probably cost more than her car. "I've scheduled Juniper's first treatment consultation for next week," he began, pulling up a calendar on his laptop. "Dr. Reeves is the best in her field. She's flying in from Boston specifically for this case." Callista nodded, trying to focus on his words rather than the crushing gratitude threatening to overwhelm her. "And the school transfer?" "Already arranged. Westbrook Academy has an excellent program for children with medical needs. Their nurse is fully briefed on Juniper's condition." He paused, studying her face. "You look overwhelmed." "It's just—" She cracked her fingers nervously. "Everything's happening so fast. Yesterday I was serving coffee and now you're married to a stranger and living in his house." Lucian's voice held a note of understanding. "I know this isn't conventional, but I want you to understand something." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "This is your home now, both of you. Whatever you need, whether it's related to Juniper's treatment or anything else, you only have to ask." A knock at the door interrupted them. Mrs. Chen entered with a fresh cup of coffee for Lucian, and, to Callista's surprise, a perfect cup of iced tea with lemon. "How did you know?" she asked, accepting the drink. "Mr. Thorne was very specific about the household preferences list," Mrs. Chen replied with a small smile. Callista looked at Lucian, who was suddenly very interested in his coffee. He'd remembered her favorite drink from their conversation at the diner. This man, who calculated every move with precision, had taken note of something so small. "Thank you," she said softly, meaning far more than just the tea. He met her eyes briefly, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Then his phone buzzed, breaking the moment. "I have a board meeting in an hour. Will you be all right settling in?" "We'll manage." Callista stood, smoothing her simple dress. "And Lucian, what you did for Juniper's room, it means everything." He walked her to the door, his hand hovering near but not quite touching her lower back. "Sometimes," he said quietly, "the smallest details matter the most." As Callista headed back to Juniper's room, she heard the muffled sounds of her daughter singing a Disney song while drawing. In just one day, their lives had transformed completely. Yet somehow, in this mansion, with its perfect symmetry, and a businessman who noticed favorite drinks, she felt something unexpected taking root. Hope, yes, but also something else, something that felt dangerously like belonging. The morning of Juniper's consultation dawned gray and misty, typical Portland weather that matched the tension in the mansion. True to his word, Lucian wore a blue dress shirt under his charcoal suit. The sight of him adjusting his tie in the kitchen while simultaneously checking medical files on his tablet made Callista pause in the doorway. "Coffee's fresh," he said without looking up. "Mrs. Chen made that tea you like too." Before Callista could respond, The sound of small feet on marble floors announced Juniper's arrival. She wore the blue dress they'd picked out, her blonde curls neatly braided, courtesy of Mrs. Chen, who had turned out to be surprisingly skilled with children's hair. The blue blanket draped over her shoulders like a cape. "You remembered." Juniper beamed at Lucian's shirt choice. "We match." Something softened in his expression as he set down his tablet. "A promise is a promise." He glanced at Callista, who wore a simple blue sweater. "It seems your mother got the memo as well." The moment of levity was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Victoria Reeves, a tall woman with steel-gray hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. She carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had spent decades saving lives. "Mr. Thorne?" She nodded to Lucian before turning her full attention to Juniper and Callista. "And you must be my brave patient and her mother. Shall we get started?" The next few hours were a blur of tests, questions, and medical terminology that made Callista's head spin. Through it all, Lucian remained a steady presence, occasionally translating medical jargon into simpler terms or asking precise questions that Callista hadn't even thought to consider. During a particularly difficult blood draw, Juniper's small hand found its way into Lucian's larger one. He didn't flinch or pull away, instead leaning down to whisper something that made her giggle despite the tears in her eyes. Callista, watching from the other side of the medical bed they'd set up in one of the mansion's spare rooms, felt her heart constrict at the sight. "Almost done, sweetheart," Dr. Reeves said kindly as she labeled the last vial. "You've been extraordinarily brave." "We wore blue for luck," Juniper informed her seriously, still clutching Lucian's hand. "And Mr. Lucian says brave people do scary things to get better." Dr. Reeves's eyes flickered between the three of them, something unreadable crossing her features. "Indeed they do." She turned to Lucian. "I'd like to discuss the results privately. Perhaps we could use your study?" "Of course." Lucian gently extracted his hand from Juniper's grip. "Mrs. Chen has prepared lunch in the kitchen. I believe chocolate chip cookies were mentioned." After making sure Juniper was happily settled with Mrs. Chen and her promised cookies, Callista joined Lucian and Dr. Reeves in the study. The doctor had spread several charts across Lucian's meticulously organized desk, disrupting his usual perfect order. If this bothered him, he didn't show it. "Juniper's condition is progressing faster than her previous records indicated," Dr. Reeves began without preamble. "The traditional treatment path would be insufficient at this point. However," she pulled up a diagram on her tablet, "the trial protocol we've developed at Meditech shows remarkable promise for cases exactly like hers." Callista's fingers began their nervous dance, cracking one by one. Under the desk, out of Dr. Reeves's sight, Lucian's hand covered hers, stilling the movement. The gesture was so unexpected, so intimate, that for a moment she forgot to breathe. "The treatment involves a series of specialized stem cell injections combined with a new type of cardiac regeneration therapy," Dr. Reeves continued. "We've seen an 87% success rate in similar cases. However, I must be clear, the process is intensive. We're looking at weekly treatments for the first month, then bi-weekly for 5 months after that." "Whatever it takes," Callista said firmly, acutely, aware of Lucian's hand still covering hers. "There's more." Dr. Reeves looked directly at Lucian. "Given the accelerated progression, I want to start immediately. This week, I've already called the board for emergency approval." Lucian's fingers tightened slightly over Callista's. "You have it. Whatever resources you need." The rest of the meeting passed in a haze of scheduling details and treatment protocols. Through it all, neither Lucian nor Callista moved their hands, as if they both needed the anchor of human contact to weather this storm of information. After Dr. Reeves left, they remained in the study, the weight of everything settling around them. Lucian finally withdrew his hand, standing to pace near the window. "I should have pushed for earlier intervention," he said, his voice tight with self-recrimination. The signs were there in her initial files. "Stop." Callista stood, moving to face him. "You've done more for us in 2 weeks than anyone has in 6 years without you." Her voice cracked, and suddenly the tears she'd been holding back all day spilled over. Lucian turned, and for a moment he looked lost, as if crying women were territory far more frightening than any boardroom. Then hesitantly he reached out and pulled her into an embrace. The gesture was awkward at first, both of them stiff with uncertainty, but then Callista melted against him, her tears soaking into his blue shirt. His arms tightened around her, one hand moving in soothing circles on her back. "She's going to be okay," he murmured into her hair. "I promise." "You can't promise that," she whispered against his chest. "Watch me." His voice carried the same tone he used in business dealings, absolute certainty. "I don't make promises I can't keep." A small gasp from the doorway made them spring apart. Juniper stood there, cookie in hand, her eyes wide with wonder. "Are you having a princess moment?" she asked earnestly. "In the movies, they always hug when they're worried, and then everything gets better." Lucian recovered first, crouching down to her level. "Something like that. Dr. Reeves has a plan to help you get stronger, but it might be a little scary. Think you can be brave again?" Juniper considered this, clutching her ever-present blue blanket. "Will you both wear blue every time?" "Every single time," Lucian promised, and Callista noticed his hand wasn't shaking as he cleaned his glasses. A sign of certainty rather than nervousness. "Then I can be brave." Juniper offered him half of her cookie. "Mrs. Chen says sharing sweets makes everything better too." Later that night, after Juniper was asleep, Callista found Lucian in his study again. Jazz played softly, and a half-empty glass of whiskey sat on his desk. "Thank you," she said simply. "For today? For everything." He looked up, his usual mask of control softened by the evening shadows. "I meant what I said. We'll get through this." The "we" hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. This morning they had been three people bound by an arrangement. Now, somehow, they felt more like a family facing a storm together. As Callista turned to leave, Lucian spoke again. "Wear the blue sweater to Thursday's treatment. It suits you." The compliment, so carefully offered, brought a flush to her cheeks. "Good night, Lucian." In the hallway, she touched her fingers to her lips, remembering the feeling of being held, of being safe. Their arrangement had never accounted for moments like these, for shared cookies and color-coordinated outfits and comforting embraces. Perhaps some promises, like the hearts they protected, had a way of growing beyond their original bounds. 3 weeks into Juniper's treatment schedule, life in the Thorne mansion had developed its own peculiar rhythm. The morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows, catching the steam rising from Callista's lemon tea. As she reviewed the schedule Mrs. Chen had meticulously prepared for the week. "Board meeting at 2, she murmured, scanning the calendar on her tablet. A gift from Lucian that she'd initially tried to refuse. Juniper's tutor at 4, treatment tomorrow at 9:30. Lucian's voice came from behind her, making her start. He moved to the coffee maker, his suit jacket draped over one arm. "I've moved the investor's call to accommodate it." She watched as he prepared his coffee with the same precision he applied to everything. 2 sugars, no cream, stirred exactly 3 times. These small habits had become familiar, almost comforting. "You don't have to rearrange your entire schedule for us," she said, though they'd had this conversation before. "Actually, I do." He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "The board expects the CEO's full involvement in pioneering treatments. My presence at Juniper's sessions lends credibility to the program." It was the kind of logical, business-minded explanation he often gave for his increasingly personal involvement in their lives. Like how staying home for Sunday pancakes was maintaining family appearances, or how attending Juniper's school science fair was supporting community relations. "Speaking of the board," he continued, straightening his tie, "they're expecting you at today's meeting." Callista nearly choked on her tea. "Me? Why?" "You're my wife." The word still sent an odd flutter through her stomach. "And this is a family company. Tradition dictates spouse involvement in certain key decisions, particularly those involving medical trials." Before she could protest, A whirlwind of blonde curls and superhero pajamas burst into the kitchen. "Mommy! Mr. Lucian! Look what I made." Juniper thrust a drawing into their faces. A crayon masterpiece featuring 3 figures holding hands under what appeared to be a rainbow. The smallest figure wore a blue cape. "That's us," she explained unnecessarily. "See? Mommy's wearing her pretty green dress from dinner, and Mr. Lucian has his special blue tie, and I'm wearing my brave blanket." Callista watched Lucian's face as he studied the drawing. Something flickered in his eyes. Longing. Pain. Before his usual composed expression returned. "The perspective is quite impressive," he said seriously. "You've captured the proportional height differences accurately." Juniper beamed at the praise. "Can I hang it in your office next to the boring charts?" A surprised laugh escaped him. A rare, genuine sound that made Callista's heart skip. "I think it would improve the decor considerably." Mrs. Chen appeared with Juniper's breakfast. Heart-shaped whole-grain waffles with carefully arranged strawberries. "Miss Juniper, your tutor sent over today's reading assignment. Something about butterflies?" "Metamorphosis." Juniper bounced excitedly. "Like my heart is doing with the medicine, right, Mr. Lucian?" The simple question landed like a punch to Callista's gut. She'd been trying so hard not to think about the reality of what was happening inside her daughter's body. About the experimental treatment rebuilding her damaged heart tissue cell by cell. Lucian set down his coffee and crouched to Juniper's level, something Callista had noticed him doing more often lately. "Exactly right. Your heart is getting stronger every day, just like a butterfly getting ready to fly." "Is that why my chest feels funny sometimes?" Callista's fingers began their nervous dance, but Lucian's steady voice cut through her rising panic. "Those feelings mean the medicine is working. Remember what Dr. Reeves said about brave cells?" Juniper nodded, solemnly. "They're fighting to make me better, like tiny superheroes." "With very stylish blue capes, I imagine," he added, winning another giggle. After Juniper was settled with her breakfast and homework, Lucian caught Callista's arm gently. "You're worried about the board meeting." It wasn't a question. She nodded, embarrassed by how transparent her anxiety must be. "Wear the green dress," he said unexpectedly. "The one from the drawing. You were confident in it at dinner last week." The fact that he'd noticed, that he remembered, made her cheeks warm. "Lucian, I don't know anything about medical technology or corporate governance. You know everything about what matters." His hand was still on her arm, thumb brushing lightly against her skin. "You understand what this treatment means to families? Like..." He stopped, swallowed. "Like yours." "Like ours," she corrected softly, surprising them both. Something shifted in his expression, and for a moment she thought he might say more. Instead, he dropped his hand and cleaned his glasses, a gesture she now recognized as his way of processing emotional moments. "The car will be ready at 1:30, he said finally. "I have a morning meeting at the office, but I'll meet you there." As he turned to leave, Juniper called out, "Don't forget to be brave today." Lucian paused in the doorway, looking back at them. Juniper with waffle crumbs on her chin, Callista in her morning robe with messy hair. For a second, his carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing something raw and yearning underneath. "How could I forget?" he said quietly. "I learned from the best." Later, as Callista stood in front of her closet eyeing the green dress, she found herself thinking about metamorphosis, about how butterflies have to break down completely inside their chrysalis before becoming something new, about how some changes happen so gradually you don't notice until suddenly nothing is the same. She thought about the way Lucian's hand felt on her arm, about how his voice softened when he talked to Juniper, about how he'd begun leaving his office door open when he worked late so he could hear them watching movies in the family room. Their arrangement had been meant to save Juniper's heart. She hadn't expected it to change all of theirs. The green dress slid on like armor, but when she looked in the mirror, she didn't see the scared waitress from the diner. She saw someone stronger, someone who could sit in board meetings and advocate for other families, Someone who could help shape the future of medical research. Someone who could match Lucian Thorne stride for stride. Her fingers reached for the delicate gold chain he'd left on her dresser that morning. "For luck," the note had said in his precise handwriting. As she fastened it, her wedding ring caught the light, no longer feeling foreign against her skin. Sometimes the bravest thing wasn't facing needles or board meetings or uncertain futures. Sometimes it was admitting that what had started as an arrangement had become something else entirely. Something that felt dangerously, wonderfully, like love. The autumn wind whipped through Portland's streets as Callista hurried up the steps of Meditech Innovations headquarters. The board meeting had run late, and now she was cutting it close for Juniper's parent-teacher conference. 6 weeks into their new life, and she was still learning to navigate this world of corporate decisions and private school schedules. The security guard smiled in recognition as she rushed past. "Mrs. Thorne, Mr. Thorne asked me to tell you he's waiting in his office." The name still caught her off guard sometimes, Mrs. Thorne. It felt both foreign and increasingly right, like a sweater that had needed time to be broken in. She found Lucian at his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, totally absorbed in what looked like clinical trial data. A familiar drawing hung prominently on the wall behind him, Juniper's crayon masterpiece now professionally framed. "You're going to be late," she said by way of greeting. He looked up and something in his expression softened. "You did well today. The board was impressed with your advocacy for expanding the trial to include more families. I just told them the truth." She moved further into the office, drawn by the warmth of his approval, about what this treatment means, what it feels like to have hope after so long without it. Lucian stood, gathering his jacket. As he passed her, his hand brushed her lower back, a touch that had become natural, almost necessary. "You gave them something numbers and charts never could. Perspective." The elevator ride to the parking garage was quiet, filled with the kind of comfortable silence that had developed between them. Lucian's phone buzzed, and he frowned at the screen. "Mrs. Chen says Juniper's asking for her blue blanket. Apparently, she left it in the treatment room this morning." "I'll get it," Callista said quickly. "You go ahead to the school. We can't both be late. I can send someone." "Lucian," she touched his arm lightly. "Go. Be a dad." The words slipped out before she could catch them. His eyes widened slightly, and for a moment the elevator felt too small, too intimate. Then the doors opened, breaking the spell. "I'll save you a seat," he said softly, before striding toward his car. The treatment room was on the 15th floor, a space that had become as familiar as their home. Callista found the blanket tucked behind a chair, next to a stack of children's books Lucian had ordered specifically for Juniper's sessions. As she turned to leave, she nearly collided with Dr. Reeves. "Mrs. Thorne?" The doctor smiled. "I was hoping to catch one of you today. I have Juniper's latest results." Callista's heart jumped. "Is everything okay?" "More than okay." Dr. Reeves led her to a nearby consultation room, pulling up images on a wall screen. "See this? This is Juniper's heart from 6 weeks ago. And this?" She swiped to a new image. "This is from yesterday." Even to Callista's untrained eye, the difference was striking. Where the first image showed irregular patterns and damaged tissue, the second looked healthier, more uniform. "The regeneration rate is exceeding our highest expectations," Dr. Reeves continued. "At this pace, we could be looking at a complete recovery within months, rather than years." Tears blurred Callista's vision. "Really? Your daughter is remarkable." Dr. Reeves's expression softened. "And she has an extraordinary support system. I've never seen Lucian Thorne so personally invested in a trial before, the way he is with her." "He's been amazing," Callista admitted, thinking of pancake sundaes and science fair projects and the way he always knew exactly what to say when Juniper was scared. "It's not just with her." Dr. Reeves gave her a knowing look. "I've known Lucian for years. The man who sits in treatment sessions holding your daughter's hand, who looks at you when you're not watching. He's not the same person he was 6 weeks ago." Heat crept up Callista's neck. "Our arrangement, Is none of my business, Dr. Reeves cut in gently. But as a doctor, I know healing when I see it. And it's not just Juniper's heart that's being mended in that treatment room. The drive to Westbrook Academy was a blur of emotional confusion. Callista arrived just as Juniper's teacher was reviewing her latest art project, a detailed diagram of the heart, complete with tiny caped superhero cells fighting off the bad guys. Her understanding of her condition is remarkable, the teacher was saying, and Mr. Thorne's explanation of cellular regeneration using superhero metaphors has really helped her process everything. Lucian sat beside her, his thigh pressed against hers in the two small chairs. He'd saved her a seat just as promised. She's always been creative, Callista said proudly. But lately she's been thriving. Her nightmares about hospitals have almost stopped. Children are remarkably resilient when they feel secure, the teacher smiled. And it's clear Juniper feels very secure in her family unit. Family unit. The words echoed in Callista's mind as they walked to the car later, Lucian's hand finding its usual place at her back. Dr. Reeves showed me the new scans, she said as they drove home. The treatment, it's working better than they hoped. Lucian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I know, I saw them this morning. I wanted to tell you, but I thought it should come from her. You knew all day and didn't say anything? He glanced at her, streetlights painting shadows across his face. I've learned that some moments deserve their own time, their own space. The weight of everything, the scans, Dr. Reeves's words, the teacher's casual mention of their family, pressed against Callista's chest. Lucian. Not yet, he said softly, understanding in his voice. Let's just be here. In this moment. At home, they found Juniper and Mrs. Chen in the kitchen, making hot chocolate. The sight of them, Juniper with chocolate on her nose, Mrs. Chen pretending not to notice the extra marshmallows being snuck into the cups, made Callista's heart swell. Mommy, Daddy, we made some for you too. The word hung in the air. Daddy. Juniper had never used it before, had always carefully said, Mr. Lucian. Callista felt Lucian go completely still beside her. Then slowly, like ice melting in spring, he moved forward and accepted the slightly overfull mug. Thank you, sweetheart. Extra marshmallows, just how I like it. Later, after Juniper was asleep, Callista found him in his study. The jazz was softer tonight, more romantic than melancholic. She didn't mean to, she started. Yes, she did. He turned from the window and his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Children don't say things like that by accident. They say them when they're ready, when they're sure. Are you okay with it? He cleaned his glasses slowly, deliberately. When my sister was sick, I promised myself I'd never let another child suffer if I could help it. I built this company on that promise, but Juniper. He swallowed hard. She's not just another child in a trial. She's yours, Callista finished. She's ours. The truth of it settled around them like a blanket. Their arrangement had never accounted for this, for love that grew in quiet moments, for family built from choice rather than obligation, for hearts healing in ways no medical scan could measure. Lucian stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. Callista. His phone rang, shattering the moment. Board member calling. Important. Go, she said, understanding. We'll be here. As she walked back to her room, Callista thought about metamorphosis again. About how sometimes the most important changes weren't the ones you could see on medical scans or measure in clinical trials. Sometimes they were the ones you felt in, your soul, in the spaces between heartbeats, in the moments when arrangement became family, and you couldn't quite remember how you'd ever lived any other way. The first real test of their newfound family dynamic came on an ordinary Tuesday, 2 months into the treatment program. Callista stood in the Meditech lobby, her heart racing as she watched Lucian argue with Dr. Reeves through the glass walls of the conference room. She couldn't hear their words, but their body language told the story. Dr. Reeves gesturing at scan results, Lucian's hands clenched at his sides, his usual composure fractured by concern. Something had gone wrong during Juniper's morning treatment. "It's a normal reaction," Dr. Reeves had assured them when Juniper's fever spiked and her heart readings fluctuated. "The regenerative cells are working aggressively. We'll adjust the protocol." But Lucian had transformed before their eyes, from the gentle father who'd been holding Juniper's hand through her treatment to the ruthless CEO demanding answers. Now, hours later, he was still here, while Callista had taken a terrified Juniper home to rest. The conference room door opened and Dr. Reeves emerged, looking exhausted. She spotted Callista and headed her way. "He's been reviewing every piece of data from the trial," she said without preamble. "All the test results, every patient record, looking for patterns we might have missed." "Is he?" Callista hesitated. "Is he okay?" Dr. Reeves's expression softened. "He's scared, not just as a CEO whose trial hit a complication, but as a father watching his child suffer. It's bringing up memories of his sister." The elevator dinged and Mrs. Chen stepped out looking worried. "Miss Juniper is asking for both of you. Her fever's down, but she won't sleep without her story." Story time had become their nightly ritual. Callista reading, Lucian doing the character voices he pretended not to enjoy. Juniper tucked between them with her blue blanket. The thought of him missing it made Callista's chest ache. "I'll get him," she said firmly. She found Lucian in his office, surrounded by holographic displays of medical data. His tie was loose, his sleeves rolled up, his glasses lying forgotten on the desk as he rubbed his temples. "You missed pancakes," she said softly. He looked up, startled. They'd taken to having breakfast for dinner on hard treatment days, a small comfort that had become precious to all of them. "I need to understand what happened," he said, his voice rough. "The cellular response wasn't meant to be this aggressive. If I had seen the warning signs earlier." "Stop." Callista moved to his desk, closing the laptop with gentle firmness. "You're not her doctor, Lucian, you're her father." "I'm not—" He broke off, pain flashing across his face. "This isn't real, remember? This family we're playing at, it was an arrangement, a business deal to help your daughter." The words hurt, but Callista saw them for what they were, fear wearing the mask of logic. "Our daughter," she corrected, quietly. "The one who just had Mrs. Chen call me because she needs both her parents to sleep. The one who draws pictures of our family and calls you daddy and knows you'll always wear blue to her treatments. I can't—" His voice cracked. "I can't lose her too. Not like Rebecca." His sister's name, spoken aloud for the first time, hung in the air between them. Callista rounded the desk slowly, giving him time to retreat. When he didn't move, she reached for him. "You're not 12 anymore," she said softly, her fingers finding the tension in his shoulders. "And Juniper isn't Rebecca. She's getting better. Today was just a bump in the road. The scans show a normal immune response to groundbreaking treatment." She turned his chair, forcing him to face her. "Dr. Reeves knows what she's doing, and Juniper has something Rebecca didn't." "What's that?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "A father who moved heaven and earth to get her the best treatment in the world, who reads her stories and makes pancakes and explains medical procedures with superhero metaphors." She touched his cheek, feeling the slight tremor in his jaw. "Who loves her so much he's making himself sick with worry instead of trusting the process he helped create." Something broke in his expression. Without warning, he pulled her closer, burying his face in her stomach. She felt his shoulders shake, as years of carefully controlled grief finally found release. Her fingers threaded through his hair as she held him, remembering all the times he'd been strong for her, for Juniper. Now it was her turn. "I don't know how to do this," he admitted against her sweater. "How to love someone this much and not let the fear consume me." "That's what family is," she said softly. "We hold each other up when the fear gets too heavy." He pulled back slightly, looking up at her with red-rimmed eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best." She smiled, wiping a tear from his cheek. A very smart man once told me that being brave means doing things that scare us. Lucian caught her hand, pressing it to his face. The gesture was achingly intimate. "Callista. Come home," she whispered. "Come read stories with ridiculous voices and eat cold pancakes and hold our daughter while she sleeps. The data will still be here tomorrow." "Our daughter," he repeated, as if testing the weight of the words. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay." They found Juniper dozing in the family room, her fever finally broken. She stirred when they entered, eyes lighting up at the sight of Lucian. "Daddy, you missed the syrup faces on the pancakes." "I heard." He gathered her into his arms, breathing in the lavender scent of her shampoo. "But I'm here now for stories. What'll it be tonight? Up again? Can you tell me about Aunt Rebecca instead?" Lucian froze. Callista held her breath, but he surprised them both by settling onto the couch, drawing Juniper close. "She would have loved you," he began softly. "She used to wear a blue blanket too, just like yours." As Callista listened to him share memories he'd kept locked away for decades, she watched the last walls around his heart crumble. Their arrangement had been a business deal, yes, but love had a way of rewriting contracts, of turning careful plans into something messy and real and beautiful. Later, with Juniper asleep between them, Lucian's hand found Callista's in the darkness. No words were needed. They'd moved beyond them, into the quiet understanding of two hearts finally beating in sync. Outside, Portland's rain tapped against the windows, a gentle reminder that sometimes the strongest growth happened during life's storms, and sometimes the most powerful healing wasn't found in medical trials or regenerative cells, but in the simple act of letting love in, especially when it terrified you. 3 months into their arrangement, Callista found herself standing in Lucian's study, staring at divorce papers she'd discovered while looking for a misplaced board report. Her hands trembled as she read the carefully formatted document, already filled out with their names waiting only for signatures. The sound of jazz from Lucian's phone suddenly cut off. "Callista?" He stood in the doorway, his face unreadable. "I was going to tell you." "When?" Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. "After Juniper's final treatment next month? Or were you waiting for the 2-year mark like we originally planned?" He moved into the room, closing the door softly behind him. "Dr. Reeves confirmed yesterday that Juniper's heart has almost completely regenerated. The trial was more successful than we could have hoped. She'll need monitoring, but the intensive treatments are nearly over." "So we're nearly over too?" The words tasted bitter. "Is that how this works? The arrangement?" "Stop calling it that." The papers crumpled in her grip. "Is that all this has been to you? An arrangement?" Lucian cleaned his glasses, but his hands weren't steady. "You know it's not." "Do I?" She forced herself to breathe, to lower her voice. Juniper was doing homework in the kitchen with Mrs. Chen. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been planning our exit strategy while teaching our daughter about constellations and making Sunday pancakes and holding my hand through board meetings. This isn't simple, Callista." "Actually, it is." She smoothed the wrinkled papers, laying them on his desk. "Either this family we've built means something, or it doesn't." He turned to the window, his shoulders tense. "Of course it means something. How could you think? Then why are there divorce papers in your desk?" "Because I'm terrified." The words exploded from him as he spun to face her. "Because every time I look at you, every time I hold Juniper, every time we sit together at breakfast or read stories or just exist in this life we've created, I'm terrified of how much I need it. Need you. Both of you." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and real. Callista's heart hammered against her ribs. "You think I'm not scared?" she whispered. "You think it's easy for me to admit that somewhere between medical trials and bedtime stories, I fell in love with you?" Lucian went completely still. "What did you say?" "You heard me." She lifted her chin, refusing to back down now that the truth was out. "I love you, Lucian Thorne. I love the way you trace your coffee cup when you're thinking. I love how you clean your glasses when you're nervous. I love watching you become the father Juniper always deserved. Callista. He took a step toward her, then stopped as if afraid moving would break whatever was happening between them. But mostly, she continued, her voice growing stronger, I love how you've shown me that family isn't about arrangements or contracts or even blood. It's about choice. And every day you choose us, even when it scares you. It terrifies me, he admitted roughly. After Rebecca, I built walls, created systems, controlled everything I could because I couldn't control losing her. Then you walked into my life with your cracked fingers and lemon tea and a daughter who needed saving, and suddenly control didn't matter anymore. So you drew up divorce papers? I drew them up because I was trying to remind myself this wasn't permanent, that I shouldn't get too attached, that when Juniper was better, he ran a hand through his hair, disheveling its perfect order. But it's too late. I'm already attached, already in love, already. A small gasp from the doorway froze them both. Juniper stood there, her blue blanket trailing behind her, eyes wide. Is it true? She asked, looking between them. Are you getting divorced like Lily's parents at school? Lucian moved first, crouching down to her level. No, sweetheart. Those papers were a mistake, a very big mistake that Daddy made because he was scared. Scared of what? Of how much I love you and your mother. Of losing you like I lost my sister. Of wanting this family so much it hurts. Juniper considered this with the solemn wisdom of childhood. But love isn't scary. It's like my heart medicine. Sometimes it feels funny, but it makes you stronger. A choked laugh escaped Callista as she joined them, kneeling beside Lucian. When did you get so smart? Mrs. Chen says I get it from both of you. Juniper looked at the papers on the desk. Can we tear those up? Like how we tear up my bad drawings to make room for better ones? Lucian stood, retrieving the papers. With deliberate care he ripped them in half, then quarters, then eighths. Each tear felt like breaking down another wall, dismantling another fear. Better? He asked. Juniper nodded, then threw her arms around both their necks, pulling them close. Can we have pancakes now? Mrs. Chen said they're ready, but you were having a grown-up talk. Yes, Callista laughed, breathing in the familiar scent of her daughter's shampoo and Lucian's cologne. Pancakes sound perfect. Later, after Juniper was asleep and the house had settled into its nighttime quiet, they found themselves back in the study. The shredded papers still littered Lucian's usually immaculate desk, but neither moved to clean them up. I don't want an arrangement anymore, Lucian said softly, reaching for her hand. I want Sunday pancakes and science projects and board meetings where you challenge my best directors. I want to help Juniper with her homework and hold you when you're worried and build something real. We already have, Callista answered, twining their fingers together. We just needed to admit it. He pulled her closer, one hand cupping her face. I love you, he whispered, the words falling like a promise against her lips. Both of you. No contracts. No arrangements, just us. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, like every pancake breakfast and bedtime story and shared worry had been leading to this moment. Like their hearts, all three of them, had finally found their perfect rhythm. Outside, the Portland rain had stopped, leaving behind a sky full of stars. Somewhere up there, Callista thought, Rebecca was smiling down on the family her brother had finally allowed himself to have. And in the quiet of Lucian's study, surrounded by torn papers and new promises, love rewrote their story one more time. 1 year to the day after that first meeting in Rosie's diner, Callista stood in the same spot where she'd once served coffee to a stranger in an expensive suit. The diner looked different now, renovated, expanded, with a new sign that read Juniper's Place in elegant blue letters. The health inspector signed off on everything, Lucian said, coming up behind her and sliding his arms around her waist. We can open next week. Her fingers found his wedding ring, the new one they'd chosen together, not the simple band from their original arrangement. I still can't believe you bought this place. You're the one who wanted to open a cafe. He pressed a kiss to her temple. Besides, some places deserve to be preserved, sacred spaces and all that. The bell above the door chimed, and Juniper burst in, her blonde curls bouncing. The blue blanket that had once been her constant companion was now transformed into a fashionable scarf around her neck, her own idea for growing up while keeping the brave part. Dr. Reeves said my heart looks perfect, she announced, spinning in a circle. Mrs. Chen followed behind, carrying a stack of children's drawings, artwork for the diner's walls, each one depicting various scenes from their family's journey. Just like we knew it would be, Lucian said. But Callista felt the slight tremor in his hands, the release of a breath he'd been holding through every checkup, every scan. The last year had been full of such moments, victories large and small, fears faced and overcome. Juniper's final treatment had been celebrated with pancakes at midnight. Her first completely normal cardiac scan had ended with tears and laughter in Lucian's office. And through it all, their love had grown deeper, richer, more real than any arrangement could have predicted. Can we set up my corner now? Juniper asked, referring to the special area they'd designed in the renovated diner, a cozy nook with books and games for children undergoing medical treatments inspired by her own journey. First, Lucian said, checking his watch, I believe we have a surprise visitor. The bell chimed again and Dr. Reeves entered, carrying what looked like official documents. Sorry I'm late. Board meetings. You know how they are. Is that? Callista's voice caught. Dr. Reeves smiled, handing the papers to Lucian. The final approval, the treatment protocol, has been officially named the Juniper Protocol. It will be available to children worldwide by the end of the month. Juniper's eyes widened. They named it after me? After the brave little girl who helped us prove it works, Dr. Reeves said softly. Thanks to you, hundreds of other children will have the same chance you did. Callista felt tears welling up as she read the documents. The treatment that had saved her daughter's life would now be accessible to families everywhere, covered by insurance, part of standard cardiac care protocols. There's more, Lucian said, pulling out another set of papers from his briefcase. The board has approved the creation of the Rebecca Thorne Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping families access advanced medical treatments. And guess who they want as executive director? Dr. Reeves smiled at Callista. Someone who understands both the medical and human sides of the equation. Callista's fingers began their nervous dance, but Lucian caught her hand, stilling it, with practiced ease. You've got this, he whispered. You've been preparing for this role since the day you told me about Juniper at that counter. Looking around the renovated diner, soon to be both a cafe and a sanctuary for families going through medical challenges, Callista felt the full circle of their journey. Here was where it had started, with a desperate mother and a guarded businessman making an arrangement. Now it would become a place where other families could find hope, comfort, and perhaps their own unexpected love stories. I think it's perfect, Juniper declared, arranging her drawings on the wall. She'd placed them in chronological order, from the first crayon family portrait to her latest masterpiece showing all of them, plus Mrs. Chen and Dr. Reeves, standing in front of the diner. Speaking of perfect, Dr. Reeves said, glancing meaningfully at Callista's midsection. Should I schedule extra monitoring for the next 8 months? Lucian's head snapped up. What? Callista bit her lip, fighting a smile. I was going to tell you tonight. After dinner. His face transformed with wonder as understanding dawned. You're 4 weeks, she confirmed. And before you start, worrying, Dr. Reeves already ran every possible test. The baby's heart is perfect. The joy that broke across Lucian's usually controlled features was breathtaking. He pulled her close, one hand splaying protectively over her stomach while the other reached for Juniper. A baby brother or sister? Juniper bounced excitedly. Can we paint their room blue? For bravery? Any color you want, sweetheart, Lucian said, his voice rough with emotion. Mrs. Chen discreetly wiped her eyes while Dr. Reeves beamed. They had all become family over the past year, bound not by blood or obligation but by choice and love and shared battles won. Later that evening, After celebration pancakes and family movies, Callista found Lucian in his study. He wasn't working for once, just sitting in his chair, staring at a framed photo on his desk, the first family portrait they'd taken after making their arrangement real. "Penny, for your thoughts?" she asked, settling into his lap. "I was just thinking about promises," he said, pulling her close. "The ones we make, the ones we keep, the ones that change everything. Like promising to marry a stranger to save her daughter. Like promising myself I'd never fall in love." He kissed her softly. "Some promises are meant to be broken. And some," she whispered against his lips, "are meant to lead us exactly where we need to be." From upstairs came the sound of Juniper singing, an improvised song about brave hearts and blue blankets and families built from love. The familiar scent of Mrs. Chen's evening tea wafted through the halls, and in Lucian's study, where once there had been careful arrangements and controlled emotions, two hearts beat in perfect sync, scarred but stronger for the journey. Their story hadn't ended with the medical trial or the torn divorce papers or even with "I love you." It continued to unfold in Sunday pancakes and board meetings, in crayon drawings and midnight cravings, in the soft kicks of new life, and the steady rhythm of hearts that had learned to trust in love's healing power. Because sometimes the bravest thing isn't making a business arrangement or fighting through medical trials. Sometimes it's letting love write a different kind of story, one where scars become bridges, where promises evolve, and where hearts find their way home in the most unexpected places. And in Portland, where rain still fell and cherry trees still bloomed, a family that began with an arrangement had become something far more precious, a testament to the truth that love, in all its forms, is the most powerful medicine of all. What touches your heart more deeply in this story? The way Lucian transforms from a guarded businessman into a loving father who makes pancakes and explains medical treatments through superhero stories, or how Callista evolves from a struggling, single mother into a strong woman who helps lead a medical foundation while keeping her caring heart. Both characters show us that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let love change us completely. Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you very much for watching to the end. If you liked the story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave a like and share your opinion in the comments. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.